to introduce to you an agent of change, Beck Tench.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay in the back? Good. Okay, so I think that the first thing I'd like to do is give thanks to Anne, who I don't think is in the room, but I wanted to kind of give you some context as to how I came to be here now for the 4th time in a row. My very first presentation as a museum person, and I'll give you a little bit of my background in a second, but I haven't been a museum person for very long. I've worked for one now for nearly 5 years, and that seems like a long time, but at that time I'd only been in museums for a couple of months. And I was talking about some of the stuff that we were doing at our museum at WebWise, which is an IMLS conference, and Anne heard it, and we happened to catch a super shuttle back to the airport, and she asked if I'd come speak to ILEAD U. I didn't really know what I was going to say, and I kind of came up with this lofty title, Becoming an Agent of Change in Your Organization, and then figured out what I meant by that. So what this has become, as I've been invited back every year, is this sort of annual reflection as to what works about change at my institution, what works about my work. And over the years, some things have stayed the same. If you've heard, some people in this room have heard this presentation before, and you'll notice some of the things are the same. And some things are different and as new as November. So it's a really cool opportunity, and I appreciate everyone, David, Andy, Anne, and Gwen, for making it so that I'm here today. Oh, I'm looking at this computer, but it's on. Okay. So a little bit about my background. I'm a designer and technologist. My major was in journalism, and kind of fell into working at a museum. The museum that I work at is the Museum of Life and Science in Durham, North Carolina. Has anybody ever been there? Andy has. That's cool. So our museum's a little different than a normal science museum. It's got your buttons that you push and kids screaming all the time, but it also has a zoo part to it. So we're on 84 acres, and we have lots of animals, and we have a butterfly house and thousands of insects and all that kind of stuff. So we're a little bit of a different kind of museum. And in 2008, they were granted money to do an institutional study and hire someone who they normally wouldn't hire to do something they normally wouldn't do, and see what kind of effect that had on the culture of the museum. So that's why I joined the museum, specifically because I wasn't a very sciencey person. And in the course of my time there, I had to figure out what science was. And I don't know, I know there's some STEM groups here, and so there might be some more sciencey minded folks in the room, but for me, I was kind of anti-science. And so understanding what science was, it's not lab coats and chemistry necessarily, but it's a way of being in the world and knowing the world, and slowing down and observing, and being a skeptic but not a cynic. So I learned through the process of trying to create change in my institution, figure out what that was about, what science really was, and it kind of coincided with what I had been charged to do in the first place, which was to fail. So my leadership, whenever I was hired, said that if I didn't fail, they would be disappointed in me. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that I think that not everybody has the opportunity that I had, but everybody has the opportunity that I have. You don't have your leadership telling you necessarily to fail right now, but there are some things that you can do in your work that allow you to fail, and do so safely. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is some ways that you can kind of sneak in failure into your work. There's this great book called Everlasting Meal by Tamar Adler. If you haven't read it, please do. It's wonderful. And one of the things that she talks about, stealing heat. So if you need to like warm up something, put it near something that you're cooking. It's sort of that kind of thing. We're going to kind of steal space to fail, and I'm going to give you some tips. One of my more favorite ways to think about failure, though, is to think about whenever we were children, even when we were just babies, and how if we had been afraid to fail at that point in our lives, we would have never learned how to walk or talk. And if we think right now that we don't have anything to learn, then then we're done. I mean, what our jobs and our social environment teaches us is that failure is something to be afraid of, but not failing is something to be afraid of because it means you're not learning. So think of failure through this talk and after as something that is evidence that you learned something, not as some sort of social disgrace or disappointment. And I've learned a lot about failure because I've thought a lot about it over the last 5 years, but I've actually learned about it in another way too. And it's not failure so much as it is change and learning from trying to change things. So I'm going to show you a picture of myself. This is me in 2000, maybe 2000. And I changed my life a lot over the course of all that time. And I bring this picture up. Last year, I brought this picture up in this talk at the very end as sort of this big reveal. And I decided to put it at the beginning this time so that you understand where I'm coming from. And that is that if anything, if I've learned anything from the 10 plus years that it's been since I look like this, it is that change takes constant practice and ready forgiveness. So as you go through the things that I'm going to ask you to do today, remember that phrase, constant practice and ready forgiveness. But I'm going to warn you first that through the course of this talk and the things that I'm asking you to do, actually in this talk and after, there are a few sharky waters ahead. So specifically, there's the shark of I don't know what I'm doing. There's the shark of I'm not smart, creative, or insightful enough to do the things I'm going to ask you to do. And there's the shark of if I fail, I'll be ridiculed. I know those sharks intimately. I'm sure that we all do. But they're not real sharks, and I know that too. It's just you, and I can tell you that for the opportunity that you have here at ILEAD, you have seen it 3 times over, even though it's only been twice. I've also seen it on the front lines. You have the opportunity to do what you need to do here. It's a safe and smart environment. So these sharks that you're feeling right now, any fears that you're feeling in the course of this talk or after, are surmountable because they're just you. Okay, so let's get on to the actual things that I'm asking you to do. I'd like to take a quick poll, if you don't mind. Raise your hand if you feel like you can draw, and raise them high, and then look around the room so that you can see the people who kind of feel confident with drawing. And also look around, keep them raised. Also look around the room to see all the people that are going to be nervous when I'm asking you a minute to draw. The people whose hands aren't raised. Okay? So, you can put your hands down. Now I'd like you to raise your hand if at any point in your life ever you have been 5 years old. Okay. I was a little worried about that. So, when you were 5 years old, you could draw, and you can draw now. In fact, drawing is just an alphabet. It's shapes that you practice over and over again. This is a visual vocabulary. With these shapes, you could draw anything that ever could be drawn. Just like with these shapes, you can write anything that ever could be written, at least in English. So, so what I'm going to ask you to do is put down your laptop thingies and I think I would have better words for these. Get your binder out, and there's some notebook paper in the back of it. I want you to take a piece of it. And I want you to just draw a squiggle on the piece of paper. A squiggle is defined as a continuous, just a continuous line from one point to another without lifting your pencil. It can be complex or it can be very simple. But just draw a squiggle on your page. Okay, and then I want you to pass your squiggle to the right.
You're on the right.
Direction.
It really doesn't have to be right. Okay, for the rest of the talk, I want you to turn that squiggle into a robot. Okay, so studies have shown that whenever you're taking in information and drawing at the same time, you actually take in more information, so I don't care that you're not looking at me or writing notes. I'm going to keep talking and saying things that I think are important, but I want you to also be drawing at the same time and just do whatever you want to do. And face your fears if you're afraid, just do it, it'll be okay. So one of the things that I started doing, because drawing, as you're now experiencing, is a way to kind of feel discomfort, because it's sort of like, I don't know, at some point in our lives we lose this, this freedom to kind of express ourselves this way, and it becomes this kind of anxiety social thing. Get up in front of the class and have to write something on the board kind of thing. And so it's also really, really low risk, even though it feels kind of high risk. So it's something that I enjoy having people do, and it's also something that I cultivated in my coworkers at my museum as a way to start making change. So when I first started working at the museum, I would hold office hours every week. We have about 80 staff members at our museum, and I knew that if I were to get my colleagues to take risks, I would have to hear from them on what the ideas were that they wanted to implement. I couldn't come up with an idea and convince people to do it. I needed to enable ideas that they had. But I couldn't meet with everyone one-on-one because there are way too many people, and I knew that the best ideas probably came from the people that were closest to museum visitors, not from the leaders who sit in offices. So I started holding office hours every Friday at 5 o'clock at a bar called the Pinhook, and we would meet there, and I would pass around a notebook, and we would draw while we were having beers and just talking about the week. Specifically, we would play this game called napkin tennis. There's a game called layer tennis where people like play Photoshop, and they, two designers make this really cool graphic with layers in Photoshop. But with napkin tennis, it was basically this bouncing back and forth of a drawing, kind of like what you're going to be doing today, the squiggle and the robot, but a little bit more chaotic. So here's the first napkin tennis that we ever did, and drawing on a napkin can be kind of difficult. So I moved to my notebook, and we'll all get a chance to do this in our small group work. Basically, it is draw for as long as you want to, then pass it. Draw for as long as you want to, and then pass it. If you don't want to draw, you don't have to draw. You can just sort of check it, and then just pass it until everybody has checked and we're done. So sometimes I would start it with kind of like a prompt, and other times I would just start it with generally a circle. That's how I normally started it. Here's the first squiggle game, and that was the robot that it created. Wow. No pressure. And so what this started doing was breaking down the barriers for people to draw, for people to take risks. They got to practice risk-taking in a very kind of small and easy way. This is where we took it next, which was the Innovation Fund. So I had some money set aside that I could, if people brought me ideas, I could put some money behind whatever technology they might need to enable their idea. And we required them to actually draw their ideas out onto napkins and post them on a board. So ideas started happening that way. I think that it's really important to have that visual vocabulary I mentioned earlier, because sometimes you need to express something and a word doesn't do it, and a drawing does it very well. And then, just to give you an idea of where this is sort of, there's so many things in my work that kind of incubate for a really long time, and then they kind of build quickly. And right now we're experiencing some quick building with regards to drawing at our museum. So the Pinhook was around 2008, 2009, maybe a little bit into 2010. The Innovation Fund was 2011, and then just this last winter, we started a project called Project Feeder Sketch. It was in collaboration with the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, who has a project called Project Feeder Watch, where people watch birds in their backyard during the winter. And so what we did was we had people draw. We taught people how to draw birds while they were watching the birds in their backyard. Drawing is, for a science perspective, this really magical activity gets people to slow down and really notice things without a whole lot of facilitation. So Here are some drawings that we had. We had over 400 drawings submitted as people participated in the 8-week program from different ranges. This woman actually drew this picture off of a kitchen tile, drawing birds. And actually we saw this as a great indicator of learning because she was noticing birds through you know, aesthetics instead of actual birds. Some people were clearly more talented. And this one here is my favorite. And because we're a science museum, but libraries have this too, we had exhibit space to play with this. So we have some bird feeders. I don't know if you can really see it. I have a laser pointer. Big bird feeders here. And so we installed, right in the rain, waterproof paper and pencils and had our visitors also draw birds. And where this idea is going next is we're actually going to create a sketchbook library for our members so that they can check out their sketchbook whenever they visit the museum and draw things that they observe while they're there and then check it back in and share it. So drawing has become part of the culture of the museum and soon to be the museum membership, and it all started with, you know, just like napkins at a bar. So that's the first thing I'm asking you to do is to draw more, and we'll be doing some of that during ILEAD U as well. The second thing that I want to ask you to do is to write more. Does anybody here have a regular practice of writing? Quite a few people. Does anybody do morning pages? Okay, so morning pages, for those who haven't heard about it, are from the book The Artist Way. Julia Cameron's the writer of that book. And they're this really awesome practice that I've been doing for 2 or 3 years now. It starts kind of first thing in the morning, and you take 3 sheets of paper and you fill them up, and then you're done. So I typically spend about 45 minutes to an hour every morning handwriting, and that's a lot of work time that may not be by some considered real work, but I consider it extremely important to a way to basically create space. Reliably create space for clarity. It's also a really wonderful exercise to exhaust the logical part of your brain. So the point of morning pages aren't, first off, there's no way to do them wrong, which is really nice to experience, but the point of them also is just to kind of get out all the stuff that's just like driving you crazy so that whenever you're done, you're at a place where you can think creatively. And that is reliably around page 3 where I get clarity and can retain focus. It's almost like a medicine that I take every day. And the other thing that I want to mention for those of you that might consider creating this space for your thoughts is that I think that it's really important to use a pen or pencil while you're writing instead of a computer. I travel a lot and had, for a while, because I also pack very lightly, wanted to use my computer as my morning pages. And there's a couple of websites like 750words.com that kind of play off of this. And it takes me about 10 minutes to write what it takes me an hour to write in terms of word count when I type. And it's not the content that matters, it's the amount of time I've spent thinking that matters. And so slowing, I've learned consistently slowing down can yield just more clarity of thought. And so I recommend that you use pen and pencil, or at least try, and making, if you decide to pick up this habit. But something that is, I also work from home, and something that is, it requires discipline to do this every day. And so something I've also learned is the power of ritual in getting my pages. If I had to wake up every morning and decide to do pages, I don't think I'd do them every morning. I even sometimes, at mornings where I have early meetings, wake up like way early just to fit them in. And so I learned about the power of ritual through Twyla Tharp and her book, A Creative Habit. Anybody read that one? Okay, not too many people. It's a really excellent book. Highly recommend it. Twyla Tharp's a choreographer, and she's very prolific in her in her choreography and has had a sustained career of being a creative person. And she has this morning ritual where she gets up really early, puts on her workout clothes, goes downstairs, hails a cab, and then goes to the gym. And she talks about how important ritual is to creativity because we don't understand creativity. And as humans, we apply ritual to a lot of things we don't understand, like death or God. And so she's applying ritual to creativity so that she has it reliably. Her ritual, she says, is when she hails the cab. So when she hails the cab, she's going to have a creative day because she has completed the ritual that gets her into a creative headspace. And so that's what I did for myself. I've had a bunch of different rituals since I read The Creative Habit, and I've found that they all they all work. But if you can, as you're experimenting with creating ritual in your life, if you can make that one thing, like hailing the cab, as small and easy to do as possible, the more successful you will be, I think, at actually getting to the point of writing pages or doing some other kind of creative canvas feeling that you want to do every day. So for me, I get up and I boil water, make my bed, take a shower, make coffee, and then write. And every day, the ritual is complete whenever I fill the kettle. And that's really easy because I get coffee on the other end. And so, it has never been easier in my life, and I've been writing morning pages for 2.5 years now to write them as this somewhat recent ritual where it starts with the kettle, and that ends with pages every day. It's wonderful. So I encourage you to think about your life and your patterns and how you might create a ritual in your life to get you, maybe it's when you first wake up, maybe it's when you first get to work, but to get you to a place where you can have some canvas to fill. The other thing that I have recently started doing is using technology to make space, not waste it. And I guess I could also say make time and not waste it. So I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but I was in a cabin this summer and had no internet and was kind of amazed at what burden I'm normally carrying around, the burden of knowing, basically, what's new, what's new, what's new, the sort of constant dopamine injection that you get whenever you find out nothing has happened, and so it still kicks in, and so so what I've started to do is explore ways that I can recreate the not having internet in a place where internet is freely available. So I put one of those light timers that you get for like Christmas lights or whenever you're on vacation on my router. And like I said, I work from home. So the timer goes on at 10 a.m. and it goes off at 5 p.m. And that doesn't mark my work day, but it marks my internet time. And it's awesome, actually. Like in the morning, I do activities that that don't require connectivity. I don't see a screen for hours. And in the evenings, I see friends, and I do art projects, and I read books, and so there's this thing that I would encourage you to experiment with ways that you can use technology. I've also dumbed down my phone. This is what my iPhone looks like. I don't have really any apps on it, and it allows me to actually sit in a place and observe and think instead of distract myself in moments of boredom. Moments of boredom happen, maybe happening right now, but they are. It's important to stick with being, I think, to have clarity of thought and to have good ideas. It's an important thing to not just distract, but to get comfortable sitting with quiet and even more so, sitting with quiet. I encourage you to seek out solitude in your life if possible. I think that there's different levels of solitude that can be sought out. I work from home. That's kind of like creativity and solitude, but I've also dedicated for the last couple of years a few days every year to go off by myself completely and to not have any internet and any people around, and just to sit and think about my work and my career and my life, and it's been extremely rewarding. A couple years ago, I went to a friend's cabin at a lake, and then I did the same. This is a drawing that I did last September when I was at another friend's cabin. I have a lot of friends with cabins at lakes. It's awesome. So in this process, I learned about this from this very dear friend of mine, Anton Zeiker. He's Mr. Sugar on Twitter. And he had done this when he was sort of contemplating a career move. And I asked him if he had any advice for me, because I wanted to do one too. And he gave me this advice, and so I'm sharing it with you as well. He said, RED plus RWR, to spend the time that I have making sure that I have a lot of rest, exercise, and a good diet, and that I just cycle through the activities of reading, writing, and reflecting. And when I do reading, writing, I also do reading, writing, and drawing and reflecting, because drawing is so important to me. But that is how I spend the time. I pack a basket full of good food, and I make sure that I go on a long walk every day. And then I just cycle through those 3 activities over and over again. And at the end of my time, I have a couple of books read, and I have a pile of paper that I've written, and I have a new perspective on life and my projects and my coworkers and all that kind of stuff. So if you have the opportunity, and I encourage you to take it, and I don't have children, I understand that many of you do, but Anton has three little ones, and he made time for this too. I think that it's rewarding and useful, so I encourage you to do it. And then the last kind of space-making thing that I want to talk about is something that I just started experiencing, and this is as a result of a conference that I went to in November in Austria, which was super exciting. And this is Horst Abraham, and he is a professor. He was talking to us about change management. And Horst asked us a question that just blew my mind, because I've long realized that space is necessary for risk-taking, but I never thought about letting go of knowledge. And Horst asked us, what knowledge do we need to let go of in order to create new knowledge? And when he said that, I knew it was profound, but I wasn't exactly sure how to let go of knowledge. So what I did was I let go of my shoes. I had this pair of shoes for about 8 years, and they were so worn. They'd actually look pretty good there, but they were so worn. If I didn't have that little super feet insole in there, you could stick your finger through them. I was carrying around rubber bands because I knew that they would fall off my feet one day, and I was going to have to get home. So what I did was I was in London at the time, and I went to Primrose Hill, which is a hill that has a pretty nice view of London. And I wrote a letter to the finder of my shoes, basically saying, this man told me to let go of knowledge. This is the knowledge I have gained while wearing these shoes, and some of it I don't want anymore. What knowledge are you holding on to? Put that letter in the shoes, and then just kind of slid them under that bench. I also drew a picture of it. And then I had an extra pair of shoes, so I walked away, and I stopped into an art gallery, and this is the sign that was at the front of the art gallery, which I thought was fascinating. And also have found the experience of grieving something that didn't fall off just yet to be very rewarding, and that it can be very nice to let go of stuff even if you're afraid to. So I encourage you to do that as well. So what I'm going to do now, since I've been talking about creating space in various ways, is I'm going to just create some space, kind of Mr. Rogers Academy Award acceptance style. I'm going to watch my watch, and I'm going to give you a minute to think about drawing, writing, morning pages, office hours, ritual, technology, letting go, solitude. Just think about these things that I've just told you, and record or don't record how you might make space in your life using some of those things. You don't have to do anything. but you can do something. And I'm going to give you a minute to do it. So, go. Second warning. Okay, thanks for doing that. So now I want to check in on your drawings. Back to the squiggle. I'd like you to now take your drawings and pass it to one other person, the person that did not draw the squiggle originally, so to the right again.
Can you figure out what mine's doing?
And now your assignment is to finish it.
That's supposed to be like the Mars rover or something.
For the rest of the talk, just finish it, whatever that
There's a
means.
scoop and a pincher and a rake.
I have to finish it now.
So, I think that there's kind of two parts to this talk. The first part is sort of how to trust yourself to do these things that I just talked about, these sort of, to cultivate creative habits and space in your life in order to think, because we all work for institutions that need change, and we all need to be tapped into the relevancy that we offer our community, and also the relevancy that we offer our staff or coworkers. And in order to figure out those things in this completely new environment, I think that we need to give ourselves space to think about them. So all I've talked about previously is getting space and kind of being this sort of this creative, really. And I think that goes a long way in modeling the behavior for the other people that you work with, so that they see your habits and they start to do them and start to think that they're okay to do. But I also want to talk about sort of like where the rubber meets the road in convincing others to change along with you and convincing others that taking risks are okay. So I want to spend the second half of this talk talking about the rest of the people that you work with. This quote, "If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea," completely encapsulates what I think we need to be doing whenever we are, whenever we're working with the people we work with to make change in their habits and have them take risks too. It's not going to be just you that's going to change your field. But everyone working, like David said this morning, everyone being an awesome librarian has totally the power to transform librarianship. So, a few tips for when people actually want to take a risk with you. Like I said before with the office hours, make yourself available to hear ideas. Don't just try to convince others to do ideas with you. Don't be a bottleneck. And whenever you have a receptive person who actually wants to take a step along with you, their idea may not be good. That's happened to me a lot. People bring ideas and they've got a lot of enthusiasm. The risk that they're taking is just as great as a good idea, but it's just not the right idea. So as people bring you ideas, look for a way to make that idea less of a duty in their future life and more of a creative outlet. So for every person at my museum who comes to me with an idea of something to do, I think 6 months down the road, when they're blogging about such and such or tweeting about such and such, or they've created an exhibit that requires this sort of constant data stream or whatever it is that they want to do, will they feel creatively fulfilled by this idea, or will they feel like it's another obligation that they have to do? And until I can get to the vision of where they'll feel like it's a creative outlet, we don't do the idea. But it's not because the idea that they had is bad, it's because it's not a creative outlet for them yet. So just as a reframe. I learned about this sort of occurred to me when I was reading one of our animal keepers, Erin Brown. We have a blog about keeping our animals, and she was a blogger on that blog, but she also has a personal blog, and I read both blogs. And she blogged one day on her personal blog about how great it was to blog for the museum, but that it was harder to blog personally. And at the end, she said that she is established and safe at the museum blog, where she didn't feel as established or safe at her personal blog. And Erin was actually one of our, she doesn't work at the museum anymore, but she was one of our best bloggers, had a wonderful voice, and it was because she felt safe and smart in that space. Creating a creative outlet for her was giving her freedom and giving her a digital camera. That is what it took. And for an animal keeper who has to follow rules because animals' lives are at stake, blogging was this great way to get them some freedom to take risks. And she really developed well in that role. So creating a space for your colleagues where they feel safe, smart, and that they are creatively expressing themselves is a way to create a sustainable project. Once I get to the point where I've got a person and their creative outlet defined, I go through this period of hand-holding, where I'll hold their hand to do what they need to do for as long as they need to do it until I completely hand off. So there are a couple of examples here. The butterfly keeper, which is a guy, Richard, our entomologist in the butterfly house, knows everything there is to know about butterflies, and so he wanted to post pictures of butterflies to Flickr, and so he would do that, and it took him 2 weeks of hand-holding before he had it. You know, he understood tags, he understood Flickr's interface, and of course he understood his digital camera, so he was good to go. Another game we had, well, the Butterfly Keeper wasn't a game, but a game that we had called Name That Zoom, which was we take a USB dermoscope and zooming in on something that's not skin. Even though it's called a dermoscope, that would be disgusting. We'd zoom in, we'd tweet on your mark, set, name that zoom, and people would try to guess what the thing was. The gal who came up with that idea and needed to sustain it, we sat side by side for over a year with Twitter, and she never got comfortable with Twitter until we moved it over to Facebook to where she could manage the project on her own. That period of hand-holding as a change agent, you need to be comfortable with that being flexible. I think Andy earlier this morning said that we need to be comfortable with, or maybe it was David. Anyway, this idea of ambiguity. There's going to be ambiguity with how long it's going to take someone to feel that they're safe. But if they have a creative outlet and they feel safe in it, some really remarkable things can happen that won't happen. And we've all seen what happens to blogs whenever they don't have those things in place. And then the third thing is to trust completely. So my social media policy at the museum is to use common sense, to pause if something gives you pause, and that I'll have your back if something goes wrong. And I think Josh Greenberg at the New York Public Library has a similar policy of, just a yes first policy, and having a sense that that if something went wrong, I would be there for the people that are taking risks on the museum's behalf, and having the institutional encouragement to fail helps me do that. Makes a world of difference into what people create, and that's really what this is about. I think pretty much everyone in the room right now could enable a blog at their institution, but could they enable a good blog? And the good blog comes from how fulfilled and safe and motivated the blogger is, and creating a place where they feel that they can take risks helps, I think, motivate people. So I wanted to kind of end all this with an example of a project that I feel really illustrates all the stuff I just said, which was from the space making personally all the way to the getting everybody involved. And it's about this project called Experiment that I started in 2009. Like I said, when I first started working at the museum, I didn't really understand science very much. Especially, like, I just had these vague memories of posters that I made with growing grass in 4th grade kind of thing. You know, it wasn't part of my college experience, and so I started redoing science projects. I had this blog called the Smart Wool Experiment, because Smart Wool socks are very expensive and they were like wearing out really quickly, and I was upset about that. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to treat this like a science project. I'm going to get different pairs of socks and wash them, and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I knew that, like, this didn't do anything for my museum. It wasn't branded as my museum, but it was something that I could, I knew I would learn something for my museum by doing it. And that kind of evolved into kind of like online bloggy science experiments. And so for 2009, in December of 2008, I tweeted out, you know, name New Year's resolutions that I could do, and it just got all these different crazy responses. And then I put them on a user voice thing and had people vote up the top 12. And so the top 12 I would do, and I mapped them across the year. January was 100% raw diet. And there were other ones that were easy, like take a picture every day of something beautiful, that kind of thing. And I invited people to do the things with me and see what happens. And so over the course of the year, there were different people that participated, some of which were staff. The raw diet, I think there were maybe 9 people that did it, and maybe 6 of them were staff. And these were totally Pinhook regulars that would come every week. This is when we were juicing something one day for lunch. And throughout the year, I'll go back to the map, there were people from all over the world that participated. In the picture one, we had over 100 people from all kinds of different countries, but it was all completely personal. There wasn't a single mention of the museum in it or anything like that. And then another whole year passed. In 2010, somebody else that really liked playing with it took it over for 2010, because it was a lot of work to do this every day. And then I had an idea about doing it at the museum, and that idea was spurred from a conversation that I had with a researcher who was studying mood and positive emotion. And so what we decided to do was to have people sign up to text their mood to us 5 times a day, every day for a month. Called it Experiment Mood. And we built some software that said that was able to receive the data, and then we gave that data to the scientists that helped us conceive of the idea. This idea of having a text this easily doable, I mean, you could really text your mood back in a conversation, was a little bit of a compromise, because the scientists would have rather had more rigor, more context to that, like where are you, or who are you with? But she also realized that we probably had an idea of what people would enjoy doing, so and what would make it doable. So we took these texts and we created a website where we graphed them and blogged about mood and emotion. You could see the mood of the community at any moment based on the text that had come in. You could see your own mood that week, on Fridays, weekends versus weekdays. We had over, I think we had over 18,000 mood data points at the end of the month that scientist was then able to use to understand. We had these like weekly assignments to understand what kinds of things had effect on people's moods. And at the end of the project, this is the scientist here, Francis, and this is a web programmer and our exhibits person, Elizabeth. At the end of the project, Francis wrote us and she said that Experiment was a way for her to play with her research, and that in the rigor of her lab she wasn't ever able to do that. And it wasn't that she could get a paper published based on what she did with Experiment, but it helped her generate new hypotheses. And I realized that this was a role that the Science Museum could play in our community, that we could work with local scientists to play with their research. And so we did it again. We did one on race and ethnicity called Experiment with Race, where people signed up to do different activities involving race. We also explored how to create a physical, like a born digital exhibit on the floor of the museum. We had a census where you would match up paint swatches to your skin tone and put it on the wall. This was one weekend's visitorship. And then other museums started noticing what we were doing and started asking us to experiment alongside with them. So right now, most of my work is experimenting with the Science Museum of Minnesota and the Exploratorium, and these other museums are doing experiments on their own. And NSF granted our museum a bunch of money to do experiments with the Exploratorium on the science of sharing with some social scientists. So we have experiments with you know, the paperclip project where you like trade something over and over again to get into a house or whatever. We did that with a group of people. This is a guy who's trading a treadmill for a bike he got when he started with a little pin. We've done games that were complete failures like this one, where we had people passing words across the country and sabotaging each other, and basically we learned that if you put people on teams, this is something that all of you are on teams, that's interesting. If you put people on teams who are going to compete, you can rely on that, and you can also deal with the problems of that. So far the best example of what Experiment has done is this game that we've created called Frenemy, where people signed up. It was a prisoner's dilemma game. You signed up and were emailed in the morning to play Frenemy with a stranger, and you got to choose friend or enemy, and it went several rounds. We're working with a neuroscientist on this one, and generated a bunch of data that he's using to publish. Actually, he's publishing on the data that we're creating through this process, and in projects where he's normally got an N of 34 of undergrad students, he has an N of 10,000, and they're not just undergrads. So, so it's been a really cool thing, and it wouldn't have started. I feel like the role of our museum has changed. It's not just the culture in our museum, but the role of our museum has changed in our community due to these exercises of creating space and getting some quiet to have good thoughts. So, I just want to leave you with some thoughts by Richard Hamming. Does anybody know Richard Hamming? Just one person, Jen. Okay. Richard Hamming was a computer scientist at Bell Labs, and he was there when there weren't very many computer scientists at all. They were all physicists and chemists and all this sort of stuff. And so he would go into the lunchroom every day, and he'd have to sit with people that he didn't share a discipline with. And he would always start conversations with those people with 3 questions. What are the most important problems in your field? Are you working on one of them, and why not? So I encourage you, when you're thinking about all this stuff, that you take your ILEAD U project. It's already been defined. It may or may not be representative of one of the most important problems in your field. It is representative of some space that you have to practice some of this stuff, and to think about the hard questions, the questions that don't have answers yet, whenever you think about what you're going to do with your space once ILEAD U is over. So yeah, that's it. That's my presentation. You can find me on Twitter at 10ch. In fact, I'll tweet right now the slides for this talk. So you can find me through the hashtag. And my museum's Twitter is at Life and Science. And if you have questions, you can ask them now. I welcome them, but we can also discuss them in the small groups.